14 years of being in corporate life has changed the way that my brain works. Let me tell you what I mean. I don't just mean that I have learned to sit through a meeting that definitely could have been an email. What I mean is that I have a hard time relaxing, feeling like I shouldn't be doing something all the time. I can hear a Teams notification and I immediately feel like somebody needs me somewhere. I can finish a full workday, close my laptop, and somehow I am still at work in my head 3 hours later. The weirdest part is for that a long time, I thought it was my personality. Now I'm starting to realize that this is not my personality. It's actually just something I have been trained to do. Because your brain gets really good at whatever it repeats over and over and over. Apparently, I've spent 14 years training mine for corporate America. Today, I want to talk about what deadlines, meetings, emails, notifications, multitasking, and just constantly being available can actually do to our brains and the way that we think. But there is some really interesting research around stress, attention, burnout, and recovery, and the way repeated experiences shape our behavior. Okay. And after reading about a lot of these things about myself started making so much more sense to me. Your brain adapts to what you repeat. So here's the first thing that matters. Your brain is not static. One of the basic ideas behind neuroplasticity is that our nervous system changes in the way that we respond to any experience. So if we can learn a new language or learn a new sport, develop a new skill, or get better at anything if we practice it, there is another side to this. We don't only practice things that we intentionally practice our environments. Think about a normal corporate workday. You might start writing something, an email comes in, you check it. Your Teams lights up, someone asks you, hey, do you have a second? You jump into the meeting. And then during the meeting, you're actually not even mentally, physically present in the meeting. You're actually thinking about the thing you were doing right before that. And then somebody else sends you a message and they say, hi. But cognitively, something real is happening behind the scenes. The practice of switching. You're practicing interruption. You're practicing monitoring for new information that you know is about to come in at any given moment. You're practicing keeping multiple things unfinished in your mind. You're keeping open tabs in your brain. And research has found that when people switch from one unfinished task to the other, part of their attention actually stays focused on the previous task. So think of like your laptop and your browser, and when you have all those browser tabs open, when you'd have too many tabs open, right? And then your computer would crash. It's because it doesn't ever stop processing the other tab that you left open. Our brains work the same way. So imagine doing that once in the workday, and that's not a big deal. Imagine doing that dozens of times every day for years, 14 of them. That's basically modern knowledge work today, right? So suddenly the fact that you can't sit on the couch after work and do absolutely nothing with nothing happening, and you still feel very mentally scattered from your work day, and you're still thinking about work. And now this is all starting to come together and make a little bit more sense. Okay. I always just used to identify and tell myself that I was very good at multitasking. And I would say super slammed and my calendar is insane and I can't catch a break. When people would say that to you, especially, your superiors and your higher ups, you take that as a compliment. We almost use the term of being overwhelmed like we're important. But lately, I have noticed that when work becomes more and more intense for me, I carry that scatteredness into everything in my life: parenting, my relationship, being a pet owner, housework, everything in my day to day, working out, making time for myself. All of that work intenseness comes home with me. I'll have the time to work out, clean, create something, sit outside. I can literally do anything that I want. And instead, I bounce between 16 different things in the house. Literally just cannot close the loop. And I wasn't always like this. It's a new trait that I have acquired in the last maybe 5 years or so. So mentally, I always have 17 tabs open. And I started to wonder, do I have poor time management? Like, what's wrong with me? Because I wasn't always like this. How did I get here? But now I have realized I have shifted And I have just got very extremely good at living in interruption mode. So, stress itself is not automatically a bad thing. Stress response exists for a reason. A deadline can actually help focus you more on the task at hand. Pressure can actually increase your effort. You know, when you're at a sports tryout, for example, like the pressure is on, you actually work a little bit harder if you really want to make the team than you would, when you're just practicing at home. The problem is when stress becomes super frequent, that your brain rarely gets a chance to come down from that stress. Now you're just living in stress mode. The prefrontal cortex is heavily involved in things like that, in your working memory, your attention span, planning, and just your cognitive flexibility. So, research has found that stress can interfere with these executive functions because when stress is super intense and uncontrollable, you cannot remember things. That actually happened to me really recently on a work call. Attention span goes out the door, your response time goes out the door, and this is all normal. This is how the body was actually meant and the brain was meant to function. It's actually fascinating when you think about how burnout actually feels because you're not lying on the floor and you're not unable to literally get up and function. You actually still go to work. You're still answering your emails. You're still going to your meetings. You're still taking calls, sending Slacks. You're getting your work done. But then after work, when it's, the simple question of what's for dinner, you cannot decide. And it is all of a sudden the hardest decision you've ever made in your life. You finally have a little bit of free time and you don't know what to do with it because you're not used to just sitting still and not go and being needed constantly. There is also a really important distinction between being tired and then occupational burnout. Two completely different things. The World Health Organization actually describes burnout, I'm going to read it, as an occupational phenomenon resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. Okay. It describes three major dimensions: exhaustion, greater mental distance or cynicism towards your job, and reduced professional efficacy. And when I read that, the one that stood out to me was not exhaustion, because you can feel exhaustion at any time for any other reason too, like physical exhaustion. It was distance. I work from home. Because sometimes I don't think the first sign is, oh, I can't do this anymore. It's more like, I don't care about this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. You become more cynical. You're more irritated. And things that used to feel challenging now just are super annoying. You don't want to help these people. You don't want to help these customers. You don't want to help your peers. And then you just start to imagine a completely different life. What if I had not gone down this route? So I have felt a lot of those things pretty recently in my job lately, and especially like the last week or so. And it has been very rough. And now here's what's interesting. It has made me want to build. It has made me feel motivated to create something, create content, grow this little side hustle, this side business, and make things that belong to me. So I'm not doing things for somebody else. And originally I thought, well, obviously you want another source of income. Who doesn't? You want that security. I do. But I realized there is another piece to the pie or the puzzle, because building something outside of work builds confidence and it makes you feel capable. And you are more than just someone who works in corporate America. I'm making decisions because I want to make them, not because my outlook is like, ding, time for you to go to this meeting that you're required to attend. And I don't think this is insignificant at all, because one of the things chronic stress can make us feel like we have lost is control. Human beings can handle effort. What becomes difficult is effort without sufficient recovery. Effort is not hard, but when you have effort without the recovery, it is hard. Researchers who study occupational recovery use the term psychological detachment. Basically, can your mind disengage from work while you're not working? Psychological detachment. Research has consistently connected psychological attachment during non-work time with employee recovery and well-being. This is where modern work gets pretty weird, but the office comes with you now. It's on your phone, it's in Slack, it's in Teams, it's in your email, it's literally in your calendar for tomorrow, it's in your notifications. And even if you don't physically open any of those things, you rehearse these conversations in your head after hours. I wonder if they've responded yet. So, studies have linked work stress and rumination with less quality sleep and difficulty recovering from work. So, when you spend your evening mentally continuing the workday, your body may be sitting on the couch, but psychologically, you're still on shift. Because how many of us sit on the couch and watch Netflix and think we're resting, but we're also checking our email? As research on notifications has found that they definitely increase your annoyance, they increase anxiety, stress, frustration, and it can contribute to errors on the task that you're working at that moment. Rehearsing a specific behavior by reacting to these notifications. So eventually, when you're sitting there waiting and you haven't received a notification in a while, we actually go check the notification. We actually go check the app to see if we have notifications. We don't even need the notifications now. We're just on autopilot, like, oh, I got to check my email. I got to check my Teams. I got to check, my Slack. I got to check, knowing something's going to be there because we are always available. We have trained ourselves to anticipate this interruption. And then we wonder why it's so hard to concentrate on one thing for just an hour. And it feels so uncomfortable to us. So, can we undo it? So, here's the part that I find super encouraging. Okay. If our brains and behaviors adapt through repetition, then can repetition move us in the other direction? Right. So, I'm not quitting my job tomorrow, and I'm not telling you to quit your job tomorrow either. Do not do that. Okay. But I am not going to sit here and pretend that taking a bubble bath is going to fix your burnout either. Okay. We have some behaviors that we have to change. What I am doing is starting to become much more protective of what happens outside of working hours. That's exercise, it's creating, working on something that belongs to me, for me, going outside, getting fresh air, spending time with, doing things where nobody needs an update from me. I'm going to do things without my phone so close by my hip all the time. Research on recovery from work suggests that psychological detachment does matter, and even research on vacations finds that detachment from work and physical activity can be particularly beneficial for employee well-being. I remember the first 6 years I worked in corporate, I never took a vacation. I literally lived to work. My kids hardly ever saw me. I worked nights, I worked weekends willingly because I wanted to move up. I wanted to feel important. I wanted to make 6 figures. That was the goal. And never took a vacation. And if I did take maybe a day or two off, my laptop came with me. And it was not until probably in the last 4 years or so that I actually started taking true, real vacations without my laptop. I would shut notifications off on my phone and I would not check them. Okay. The goal is not just how do I become more productive? Okay. It's more so like how do I become harder to interrupt? How do I practice the activity of focusing again? How do I create parts of my life that belong to me where I don't have to respond to anybody immediately? And how do I stop treating like every single minute like unused capacity? And maybe most importantly, who am I when nobody needs anything from me? I think that's the question I'm trying to answer for myself right now as well. So, because after 14 years in corporate life, I've been very useful. I have climbed the corporate ladder. I'm very good at meeting deadlines. I'm good at working under pressure. I'm good at solving problems. I'm good at handling things. I'm dependable. I show up. And those are not bad qualities to have, but they also should not define me as a person. I'm proud of what my career has taught me. I'm proud of what it has given me. I'm proud of what I've done. But I don't want me being efficient and a go-getter to be my entire personality. I don't want my ability to handle stress to be the reason that I continuously live in stress. I don't want to spend my whole life being really good at completing tasks for somebody else and never build my own. So that is a huge reason why I've created this channel. I want to understand why we get stuck, why we're burnt out, and why changing our lives feels so hard when we want it so bad. And most importantly, how we're actually going to start changing it. So, if you're someone who's in your 30s or 40s and you're looking at your life and you're thinking, hey, I'm really grateful for what I've built, but I don't want the next 10 years of my life to look like the last 10 years. You want to go in a different direction, but you don't want to give up everything that you've done either. I get that. But if that's you, you're probably in the right place.